What's up, my sweet sugar bushes? So yesterday I recorded this video and got it all nice and good, went to go edit it, and realized my dishwasher was on in the background, and I was unaware that there was a fucking jet engine installed in my dishwasher because you can't hear me talk. You can just hear this annoying high-pitched whining noise in the background. I try to use my video editor's background noise. You know, it takes out the background noise. It just made me sound like a fucking robot. So I figured I might as well just re-record everything with my dishwasher not running. I kind of messed up the look I did yesterday too, so this gives me a chance to go back and try to do it again, but do it better. So I'm kind of excited about that. So without further ado, let's get started with another segment of Crime and Cosmetics. As always, I am your host, Snaxton. So today we are talking about John Lawson, also known as Pazuzu Algarad. If you don't know who, self-proclaimed devil worshipper, edgelord supreme, and turd boy maximum, that's what I like to describe him as, because he really just strikes me as this person who never grew out of their, like, oh, I'm gonna be everything everyone's afraid of phase. The world doesn't understand me. So what does he do? You know, when he gets older, he files his teeth down to a point, you know, tattoos all over his face, stuff like that. And he just tries to be the worst person he can possibly be. Now this story takes place in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Clemens, North Carolina. They're right next to each other. The house on Nob Hill Drive that his mother owns, that he stays at, is in Clemens, North Carolina. Now, during the series, I will refer to it as Pazuzu's house because it's just easier for me to say that. But in reality, Pazuzu never owned this house. It was his mother's house. He just lived there because he was a piece of shit. Nothing against people who live with their parents, but it was obvious that, you know, he took advantage of his mother, he abused her, and he was genuinely a not good person. So we're going to refer to him as a piece of shit. If I could go back and live with my parents, I 100% would. So we should probably start doing the makeup look. Whoops. We're going to do a black and white look today. And I'm going to try to get it looking good, better than I did yesterday. So our boy grows up in California way. He then moves to Clemens, North Carolina with his mother. They moved to Clemens, North Carolina. It is an extremely ultra-religious town. Also, I bought this cool tool, this liquid eyeliner. Came with this tool to help me with my wings, so let's give it the old college try. Also, shout out to Laura for sending me this Stilla liquid eyeliner from my Amazon wish list. I very much appreciate that. Actually, let's give that a try. And shout out to Christina for recommending this to me. They moved to Clemens, North Carolina. This is an ultra-conservative evangelical town. In the documentary The Devil You May Know, it's a super good documentary about this case. Vice did it. Some gentleman was kind enough to upload all the parts to YouTube, so if you want to check it out, I do recommend. I will tell you this though, there are explicit use of heroin in this documentary, so just be on the lookout. I guess that kind of turned out good. I just gotta connect them. So just a heads up that they explicitly show people slamming shit into their veins, not like a question about it, like it full on shows it. So if that's a sensitive topic for you, I would not take a gander, or you can skip past those parts. But anyways, in this documentary, someone refers to Clemens as the perfect town to grow up in. You're surrounded by, you've got a church in every community. You're surrounded by churches. People here, they eat the same food, they shop at the same stores, they vote the same way. Ideally, and your kids all go to the same school. And, you know, ideally, it is one of the perfect places to raise a family. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a fucking nightmare to me. Now, before we talk about Turd Boy Pazuzu, let's talk about Stacy Carter and Joshua Wetzler, because it's important we tell that story, and I really want to bring home how much the system fucking failed Josh. So, Stacy Carter and Joshua Wetzler, they meet. Stacy describes herself as very introverted, you know, someone who's not very outgoing, and she was immediately attracted to Josh because he was very, very outgoing. It didn't take long for people to become Josh's friend, and he was someone who just all around really enjoyed life, and he loved animals more than anything. Him and Stacy were both extremely passionate about animals. So for a portion of their life, they spend it traveling the USA in a van, like some typical white people. And till one day they decide, you know, we want to settle down. Their plan was to buy a farm and open a horse rehabilitation center. So they go and get this loan through this bank and buy this farm. It turns out the bank doesn't really have their best interest in mind and ends up fucking them over. Damn, I meant to do this little black spot right where this slit in my eyebrow is. Whatever, I'm not worried about it. We'll, you know, next time, we'll get her next time. So the bank fucks them over. They foreclose on this farm. They had a child at this time, so to make ends meet, Josh starts selling, you know, weed and mushrooms because he really doesn't have another option. Now, understandably, Stacy does not want their child around that. I feel like this doesn't look as crisp as I want it to because it's too blotchy. I need to go in with some liquid eyeliner and fix that. So, understandably, Stacy does not want their child, around it. You know what? We're just gonna redo this whole black side. So, God, how are you guys so good at straight lines? I don't understand it. I guess it's just practice, but fuck. So, Stacy doesn't want their child around that, so she gets a job on a farm where part of her, you know, her getting paid is she is allowed to stay and have living quarters on that farm. Josh moves into a trailer, you know, in the same town, so he can, no, don't like that. Gonna have to redo that. That is, no. I thought I wanted to even it up with the slit in my eye, but it's just, that looks way too small. It does not look good. I'm trying to look like one of those cool e-girls I see on TikTok that have, like, the block eyeshadow, or like, black piece right here, and it looks so cool, but I'm not as cool as those e-girls, I guess, dude. Josh moves into a trailer in the same town, just so because he wants to be close to his kid, of course. He starts selling drugs, you know, and it's not anything, he's not out here fucking selling crack, dude. He's selling weed and mushrooms. Two harmless, you know, well, no drug is harmless, but two very, very low profile drugs. Also, I would like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs. So he gets a package sent to him via USPS. It is a bag of psychedelic mushrooms. Well, that does not go over well. The authorities get involved and Josh is arrested. Now, since it involved the Postal Service, it is automatically a felony drug charge because it involved USPS. So he goes through the court system. He's, you know, he goes through the court system. He's sentenced. He now has a felony drug conviction. Since this is an extremely small religious town, it is front page news on every paper because they don't have anything better to report about than someone who got some mushrooms sent to him via mail, and they basically crucify him for what he's done. This in turn leads to him losing all of his clients for his hoof trimming business. He now has a felony drug conviction. He has to pay for probation. They don't, you know, he doesn't really, society basically fails him because it's not like he's out here fucking killing people. He just sold some fucking drugs to make ends meet, dude. I hate the stigma that these lovely Christians of this town have on drug users, as if, you know, they're the scum of the earth. But, you know, there ain't no love like Christian hate. You know what I'm saying? So he now can't get a job. He can't make ends meet because he has this felony drug conviction on his record. He has to go back to selling drugs to pay for his probation. Every job he applies to, he gets denied because, you know, this is a small town. Nobody wants to hire him. So he ends up, you know, selling drugs, and this is said as how he met Pazuzu. They had the same taste in music, and Josh really loved cooking for everybody. So I think, and Stacy herself even said, you know, Josh liked hanging out with the misfits, the people who were kind of pushed aside by society, because he saw them as more interesting than the cookie cutter image that you would have of someone in this town. And one of the things I hate about this case is how the media really only paid attention to Pazuzu when everything went, you know, when everything surfaced, basically. I'm kind of, you know, I have it explained. I want to, you know, focus on the victims, but for me to get my point across of how negligent the police were in this case, I can't go dive straight into the victims, but Stacy Carter and Joshua Wetzler are very important to the story. Joshua Wetzler is a victim, but you'll see what I'm talking about later on. So Joshua gets his felony drug conviction February 23rd of 2009. It said around that time is when he started, staying at Pazuzu's house. Again, we're talking about Edgelord Supreme here. Pazuzu, while he was obsessed with death and murder, his house was like a safe haven for people in this town who had been outcast because, you could do whatever you want at this house. Like, literally, it was free reign. His front door had like a big evil will triumph sticker, a big skull, had this super long spiel about how, if the U.S. can make their own laws, and we can make our own laws here, and if you step on my property, you're trespassing, this, that, and the other. Really, like, putting it, basically being as edgy as possible. And like I said, his residence, his mom's house, attracted these, burnouts and the sort of outcasts of society because you could do whatever you want. You wanted to whip it out and take a piss on the carpet? Hey, man, go ahead. You want to pop a squat in the other room, take a shit on the floor? Go ahead, dude. You want to go sit down and slam shit into your veins? Absolutely. You want to smoke whatever you want to smoke? You literally could do whatever you want. You want to fucking kill people? Boom, you got it. Let's do it. So it really attracted these people because he had this very powerful aura about him. They felt that, when they were around him, they felt free because there was literally no judgment. You could literally, like, I don't know how much better I can drive this point home. You could do whatever you wanted in that house. It did not matter. They interview, in this documentary, they interview this guy, Crazy Dave Adams, and he's like, oh yeah, we would hang out and have fun, cut the head off of a bird and drink its blood, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. And then apparently in Pazuzu's kitchen, he kept some serious weaponry, as he put it. Guns, knives, the whole 9 yards. And like I said, he lived in this like super evangelical town, so he did everything in his power to make himself seem scary. He knew that he was not going to thrive in this town, so he was like, you know what, if I can't thrive in this town, I'm gonna be the baddest dude I can fucking be, and I'm gonna be fucking bad, man. So he, tattoos his face, like I said, sharpens his teeth down to a point. Maybe we'll get super gothy with it and put some black on our under eye and then do some like drips all the way down our cheeks like we just had ourselves a good cry, because there's nothing wrong with having a good cry, and then outline them in white. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes. So like I said, he was not going to thrive in this good Christian town, so he said, you know what, I'm going to be as bad as I can be, and that's that. It's like, I'm going to be the worst possible person I can imagine. So like I said, he tattoos his face, files his teeth down to a point, gets Satan tattooed on his forearm, like a real edgy boy, and has this home where, you can do whatever you want in. So it attracts these burnouts and these outcasts. People talk about you could literally smell the house from the front porch. Like, you open the door and this just aroma of urine and ammonia hits you in the face. They're in the documentary, this dude Nate, who, by the way, I think Nate knows way more than he's letting on to people. We'll get to that later. He's like, yeah, you knock on the door and first of all, you hear just a shit ton of dogs barking. There's dead animals all over the place because, the animal sacrifices and shit like that. Ooh, I kind of like that. I do kind of like that. I like this white up here. I think we're going to outline this in white as well. I'm going to clean up this edge. But so let's get back to the story. Sorry, I got caught up. I just, like, this town saw him as like this Satan on wheels, basically. And I understand why they see that. They're very, that town very much believed in the forces of good and evil. They believed that there was a righteous battle happening in the world against the Lord and these devil worshippers. So I understand why people saw him like that. When, growing up in like that community of like edgy alternative people, he really just looks like someone who didn't get enough attention paid to him. He got bullied. He got bullied in high school a lot. They called him Turd Boy because he never showered. He was definitely an outcast, but being in that community of the alternative community, he really, to me, just looks like someone who was trying really fucking hard to be edgy and it was not working. So back to the story, sorry. I hate how people idolize this dude and put him on this pedestal of like, oh, he was a Satan worshiper, fucking the evilest. And no, he's just a fucking edgy kid who mama didn't pay no attention to him. He also believed that filth gave him power. He didn't shower for more than once a year. He said he felt like showering got rid of the body's natural defenses to fight off infection and illness. He also, when you start this like cult of people, he was a wannabe Charles Manson. Like he wanted to start this family. That's what he called it, the family. So what does every wannabe Charles Manson do? They get themselves some sister wives. So he had these women that he called fiancés that, they were his girlfriends, whatever you want to call it. He called them his fiancés, and they regularly participated in like orgies, stuff like that. Listen, man, this dude has admitted to only showering once a year. He felt like filth gave him power, hadn't brushed his teeth in God knows how long, plus they're filed down to a point, so I can only imagine the decay that is happening since he broke through his enamel and exposed the nerve. How anyone was willing to get near those nether regions kind of gives me hope, to be honest, that no matter how filthy you are, you can still get laid. So yeah, he started building this community of like misfits and outcasts that felt like they just had this unfathomable power when they were around him. I'm trying to execute this crying look without it looking too terrible. Let me see if I can when I add some white, if it looks like, it looks more prominent. I'm kind of winging this look here. I don't exactly know what I want to do with it. So originally I wanted to do some like smudging type makeup down below my eye, but I did it yesterday and it took me like 20 minutes to try to make each eye look good, so I don't want to do that again, and I ended up rubbing makeup wipes on my face so much that my face started to burn. So we're not going to do that again. So back to Josh, he's still down on his luck, he can't get a job, he's having to sell drugs to make ends meet, what have you. So in July of 2009, Josh goes and sees Stacy. He goes and sees his kid. They have a great time. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. Josh, like a bunch of Stacy's friends come over because she's still working on that farm where she can have boarding. Their friends come over. Josh cooks them pizza and stuff like that, and that will be the last time Stacy ever sees Josh alive. So Josh cut contact with Stacy, and she believed that he didn't contact her because he was kind of, maybe he couldn't pay his probation. So she thought that he was on the run from law enforcement. His PO, his parole officer, was also contacting Stacy, asking where he was. And she figured, since they're calling me and asking me where he is, they must be actively looking for him. So she didn't feel like it was needed to, file a missing persons report on him because she thought that they were already actively looking for him. Now, unfortunately, that is not true. So Stacy starts realizing something is wrong because Josh does not call his mom on her birthday, and he also didn't call Stacy or their son on Christmas, which is not like him at all. It's definitely not like him. He calls on those important events. So she thinks, maybe I do need to go to the police and speak with them about this. So she goes to the police department and says, hey, I have not heard from my, fiance or whatever in X amount of months. It's about 7 months now. X amount of months, and I need to file a missing persons report. And they're like, okay, who's your fiance? And she's like, it's Josh Wetzler. And they're like, hey, we found Josh's car, like, just parked in a parking lot with the keys still in the ignition. Is that weird? And she's like, what the fuck do you mean? Yeah, that's weird, She's like, why didn't you contact me? I guess the police department, when they find an abandoned vehicle, they don't contact the family of the person that owns it. So she immediately starts getting worried. It's out of Josh's character to not call them. It's out of Josh's character to just up and run away. But whenever they found Josh's car, the police looked him up. They saw that he had a felony drug conviction. They saw that he had a record. They did not deem him worthy enough to use police resources on them because they were like, oh, he just skipped town. He just went away, They thought he just hopped on a Greyhound bus and left, and he was not important enough for them to put resources into finding him. So the crying with the black and the white didn't quite work out. I don't think I'm at that level yet to be able to pull that off, but I do have this cool glitter silver and this weed palette from Revolution makeup Revolution London. It's called Hybrid, so I'm going to use that, and I think that'll look really cool. And then we'll try to do some designs on our face here. So one thing I forgot to mention, Pazuzu, that name is the Assyrian demon in The Exorcist. That's what he named himself after. His full name that he changed his name to was Pazuzu Algarad. So like I said, police have written off Josh's disappearance as he just skipped town, you know. This man's got a criminal record, so he's obviously, you know, he just got out of here. Because they don't want to put any resources in him, and the police are terrible at their job in this town. So Sylvia LeBeau meets Pazuzu in the fall of 2009. It was just a few months after Josh's disappearance. So she's a preacher's daughter, you know, she's very, like, active in the church, but she was, you know, she's in her teen partying phase, as we all go through. And she ends up meeting Pazuzu through, I think it was their friend Amber Birch, or they called Amber Bubbles. So she ends up going over to Pazuzu's house, or I think she's dropping them off or something, and she's like, oh, you know, all right, see you guys later. And they're like, oh, no, you know, come inside and watch this home video that we made. We really want to show it to you. And she's like, okay, cool, I guess. So she goes in there. This home video is Pazuzu and Amber dancing around naked, and then, you know, at one point Amber's doing, you know, she says explicit acts to herself, and in one part of the video Pazuzu is carrying a knife, and he's got a bloody bandana on his head. Well, it turns out that bloody bandana he was wearing actually belonged to Josh Wetzler. But they are very proud of the crimes that they committed. They do not care who knows. They want to tell everyone that'll listen, you know, that we've killed somebody. You know, one of Pazuzu's friends, Crazy Dave Adams, says he went over there one day and was hanging out, and Pazuzu was like, oh, I've got somebody in the basement. And most people, you know, they thought there was some kind of truth to Pazuzu's story, but in a sense, they also thought, you know, he was full of shit. He was just trying to scare people. But he tells Crazy Dave, oh, I've got someone in my basement, and Crazy Dave's like, yeah, okay, sure you do, bud. And Pazuzu's like, if you see someone walk out of the basement, don't let them leave. And Crazy Dave's like, okay, yeah, I won't let them leave, bud. Because he thinks he's full of shit. He says Pazuzu then put a sword to his neck and said, if you don't help me bury this hole in the backyard, I'm going to fucking kill you. And so he went out there and helped him bury a hole. Didn't know what it was for, you know, didn't ask any questions, but, you know, when someone's threatening to kill you, I understand, you know, I get it. So Trina Billings is actually one of the first people that kind of report Pazuzu to the police. So her father had just recently gone through a divorce and was hanging out with Crystal Matlock. Now, Crystal Matlock was one of Pazuzu's so-called fiancées. And one day at, you know, Trina's house, his father's hanging out with Crystal Matlock. They invite Amber Birch, one of Pazuzu's fiancées, and Pazuzu as well, over to the house. They start hanging out, drinking, having a good time, and a couple hours go by, people get more intoxicated, and Pazuzu starts talking about how they have a dead body in their basement that they've covered with kitty litter and bleach to, excuse me, to get rid of to keep the smell down. As if that fucking matters, dude, your house smells like shit anyways. But death does have a very, very, very certain pungent smell. If you've never smelled a dead body, you can't get that smell out of your nose. So the next day, Trina's at home, and her father shows up to the house. He had left earlier that day in a pair of jeans and like a t-shirt, just a regular day. He comes back, but he's wearing a pair of cut-off shorts, and he doesn't have a shirt on, and he's covered in dirt. So she's like, what the hell is going on, you know? But her father won't tell her anything. So Trina's father was also with Pazuzu's mom, Cynthia. And her dad wouldn't tell her anything. The only thing he would say, you know, the only thing they would mention is that they got to get back to Cynthia's house because they have to take care of something. So they leave to go back to Cynthia's house. Trina's like, this is fucking weird. I don't like this. So she gets in her car and she follows them. Once she shows up to Pazuzu's mom's house, basically, her dad, Trina's dad, sees that she has follow them, and he walks over to her car and he says, "Get the hell out of here." And she said, "My dad has never talked to me like that, so it was very, I knew something was wrong, so I left as he instructed." So after this whole ordeal, Tarina's dad didn't tell her anything about what was going on. He didn't mention it to her. She had asked, but he said, it was nothing, don't worry about it. But he did tell Tarina's best friend. He tells Tarina's best friend about how they chopped up the body and buried it in the backyard, this, that, and the other. Tarina was, kind of at a loss for words. She didn't want to go to the police, but she told herself, if that was my brother, I would want somebody to go, talk to the police and turn them in. I think this came out way better. I like this little silver cry line. So let's try to start on this other eye, then we'll come back and clean this bad boy up. So she goes and talks to the police. The police are like, "You okay?" And, instead of like, "Hey, we should treat this case, we should, do this right and kind of see what we can find out before we let them know that we're kind of onto them." So the police instead decide, what, let's just go over there and ask, they wouldn't lie to us, we're police officers. So they go over to Pazuzu's house and knock on the door, and they're like, "Hey, bud, we got a tip that you may have buried somebody in your backyard. Is that true?" And Pazuzu's like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, shit, okay. Can we come look?" And Pazuzu's like, "Fuck off." And they're like, "We've done all that we can done. Have a good one, bud." And then they leave. Some stellar police work there. And it also turns out that 2 months after Josh had went missing, police received an anonymous tip from their Crime Stoppers line saying that a man by the name of Pazuzu had killed somebody and buried them in his backyard. And the cops were like, "Oh, those silly prank callers." And maybe one of them was like, "Do you think that could have been Pazuzu?" And the other guy was like, "No, he said Pazuzu. You heard them. There's no way they could be the same person." So Sylvia LeBeau is at a party one night, and she said she was partying, took some mushrooms, having a good time, just, hula hooping, this, that, and the other. Her friend says, "Okay, I got to take you home." So they are in the car on the way home, and Sylvia casually mentions, Pazuzu. She's like, "Oh, have you heard about this dude? They said that he has some guy named Josh buried in his backyard, blah, 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 blah." And Sylvia's friend looks at her and says, "Excuse me, Josh?" And just looks extremely shocked. And Sylvia's like, "Yeah, that's what I've heard." And her friend's like, you need to talk to my friend Stacy." So Sylvia decides she's going to devise a plan. She is going to get as much evidence against Pazuzu as she can. So she decides that she is going to take her phone and get some voice recordings and see if she can get them to admit to what they had done. And so she goes in and she starts, kind of mentioning the murders and stuff like that. And when she asks about it, people, she's like, "Oh, is it true Pazuzu has killed somebody or has people buried in his backyard?" And everyone's just like, "Yeah, of course." Like it's common knowledge, apparently. She said the main voice on the recording was that of Nate. And like I said, I think Nate, Nate knew a little bit more than he was leading on. There's a part in the documentary where Nate talks about how he took out a Lowe's credit card so he could buy tools and then sell them to get heroin, and that one day Pazuzu asked him if he could buy some new floors for him and install, and buy some new floors to install on his house. And Nate was like, "Yeah, of course." So he says, "Oh, I bought the floors and I headed over to the house and we installed them, blah, 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 blah." And then the producer giving the interview is like, "You didn't notice any blood stains on the floor?" And he kind of backtracks and says, "Oh, well, I brought the floors over there and dropped them off, and then I came back later," which I'm like certain he knows more than he is letting on to. So Sylvia gets all this information. Now, at the same time, there was a gentleman that grew up with them named Matt Flowers. Matt Flowers says that, he saw all of his friends getting into heroin and drugs and stuff like that. So when he got his GED at 16, he joined the military and left. He was deployed in Iraq, and he said, whenever I was in Iraq, Pazuzu would call me and be like, "Hey man, did you kill anybody yet?" This, that, and the other, which is not something you fucking ask. So when Matt gets back from Iraq, he comes into contact with his old high school girlfriend, Dixie. and Dixie was actually dating Nate at the time, but him and Dixie are talking, and she's like, oh, I'm part of the family, and Nate's like, what the fuck? I mean, not Nate, I'm sorry. Matt is like, what the fuck are you talking? Some wannabe Charles Manson shit. And she's like, yeah, you know, I'm one of Pazuzu's fiancés now, this, that, and the other. I'm part of the family. And then she mentions how she had to help them bury a body. And Matt is like, what the fuck, dude? Matt is having like a problem with himself, you know, do I turn this in? You know, I feel like I don't do something about this, like I'm just as in the wrong, you know, I would want someone to do it for me. Eventually he ends up writing a police report. He leaves Dixie's name out of it and stuff like that, but that police report, along with Sylvia's, causes Pazuzu's house to get searched. So they begin searching Pazuzu's property. Now in the backyard is supposedly where the bodies were buried, right? So the tools that they needed to search for these bodies, a GPR, which is a ground penetrating radar, tells you if there's something below the surface. Now it was apparently being used in another case at the time. And they were like, okay, well, we can use cadaver dogs, but you know, we will tell you right now, it is a hit and miss. If the cadaver dog will pick up on, you know, a scent or a body, there's a chance they won't pick up something if it's buried there. And the police department's like, yeah, whatever, okay, just bring him in. Since we're not gonna wait for this equipment that they said it would take 2 weeks to get to them. So they bring out the cadaver dogs, and lo and behold, the cadaver dogs don't get a hit on anything. And they're like, okay, well, you know, we can't really do anything about this because we didn't find anything that proves these reports that we're getting. So after this initial search that they, you know, this initial raid, things in Pazuzu's house, the violence starts to escalate. You know, he's arrested. His mom presses, you know, he gets arrested for assaulting his mom. You know, his girlfriend, later one of his fiancés, is arrested for assaulting his mom, and then is arrested for assaulting him. It's just, you know, you can tell that tensions are rising. So in October of 2010, Pazuzu and Nicholas Rizzi are headed to a gas station. They get to this gas station and they see a young black man by the name of Joseph Chandler standing outside. Now, Joseph Chandler's mom has no idea why he got in the car with these gentlemen. Joseph Chandler was also legally blind, so it could be that he thought they were someone else or something of the sort. I'm not 100% certain on that, but his mom to this day has no clue why he got in the car with those people. My heart goes out to his mother, and may he rest in peace. But he gets into the car with Pazuzu and Nicholas Rizzi, and they, you know, they're talking, whatever, having a good old time, and they go out to Yakin River. So when they get out to Yakin River, they're standing by the river, and Joseph is standing there, and Nicholas Rizzi comes back with a shotgun and attempts to shoot him, but the gun malfunctions and doesn't fire. He then goes back to the car, grabs a pistol, comes back, and as Joseph Chandler is attempting to light a cigarette, shoots him in the head. And they leave his body there. Now, a couple days later, his body is found on a boat dock by some fishermen. So, Pazuzu and Nicholas are picked up not long after. They claim it was a hunting accident. They claim that a gun malfunctioned and shot Joseph Chandler in the head. It was a complete accident, blase, but obviously they're full of shit. And so the judge was like, you know, if it was an accident, why didn't you call authorities? Why didn't you call somebody? During this, Pazuzu is required to take a mental evaluation, a psychiatric evaluation, to see if he is mentally fit to stand trial. So he takes this evaluation. That's where the reports of him, you know, only showering once a year because he feels like it. Showering takes away the body's natural defense to fight off illness and sickness. He never brushed his teeth. You know, his teeth were filed down to points. This, that, and the other. He claimed that. He filed this. He needed to file his teeth down to points because it aided him in his animal sacrifices he had to do for his Sumerian religion. He didn't say what the religion was, but he said, you know, him and his fiance were the only one that practiced it. You know, and in the court, the judge is also like, Pazuzu, you know, what's that mean? And, you know, Pazuzu's all big and bad, but he sounds very, you know, scared to answer this question because he thinks it's going to cause the judge to give him a harsher sentence. And he's like, he doesn't say anything, and the judge is like, no, can you hear me? And Pazuzu like, yes. And he's like, Pazuzu, what's that mean? He's like, it's the Lord's name. And then the judge is like, oh, what does Allah mean? And Pazuzu's like, hey, it's God in Arab. Like, the dude's a fucking idiot. And he's big and bad and almighty until he gets in front of a judge and gets in front of a court, apparently. So during this mental evaluation, he is diagnosed with schizophrenia, agoraphobia, and alcoholism, but he is still deemed mentally fit to stand trial. So Nicholas Rizzi gets charged with like some dumb fucking awful sentence. He's charged with manslaughter, not murder, so he gets like 18 months. Pazuzu, on the other hand, believes a slap on the wrist. He gets a suspended sentence and 5 years of fucking probation for aiding in a murder. I don't know if it was like the psych eval that they went lenient on him with, or the fact that it was stated that he was hospitalized like in mental care facilities at a very young age, things of that nature, but it's a clear-cut case of negligence from the courts and the judge when this young man literally was shot in the head, and both of his murderers get a very light sentence for the crime. So about 4 years have gone by since Pazuzu's house was first raided. This is 4 years that, Stacy is struggling and doesn't have any answers for what happened to Josh. Her son doesn't have any answers. It's fucking heartbreaking, and you can tell in this documentary too. Like I said, I'll link it down in the description. But there is some really explicit drug use, so just if that's a trigger warning, I'm warning you now. You can tell how Stacy describes and talks about Josh that he was like the love of her life. She loved him to bits and pieces, and it was just an unfortunate situation of life kicking the shit out of them. But 4 or 5 years have gone by, and Matt is still in Winston-Salem. He starts, he's at war with himself. He's thinking, well, he's full of shit. He never did any of this. But then he's also like, but what if he did? What if he did do this, and you didn't do anything to stop it? You're no better than him. What Matt starts doing is he starts going over to Pazuzu's house and hanging out there, a couple times a week, and to make sure Pazuzu doesn't hurt anybody or kill anybody or do any off-the-wall shit. He tells a story about how one day they were at his house and they were hanging out. It was him, it was Matt Pazuzu, and someone that Matt only describes as a super fucking jacked dude. He says he was really cut, just super big. And he talks about how sometime during the night they were drinking, partying. He talks about how Pazuzu began to kind of assault and abuse his mom, and this super jack dude was not having any of it. He looked at Pazuzu and said, "You're not going to treat your mom like that in front of me, and if you continue to do it, I'm going to fucking do something about it." So after that had happened, Pazuzu stops, because at the core heart of it, Pazuzu is a pussy. He is a fucking coward. And so he stops and he goes into the kitchen and he asks Matt to come in the kitchen with him. And Matt says once he gets into the kitchen, his whole demeanor changed. And Pazuzu's like, "Hey, let's fucking kill this guy. We'll get away with it." And Matt's like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Let's just go to the store and get some beer and cigarettes, man." And Pazuzu's like, No. Just fucking kill him, dude. We'll get away with it. I've got a gun. We can go in there and shoot him in the head. We will get away with it, I promise. And like I said, Pazuzu, where he was, obsessed with murder, he was more obsessed with getting people to do crimes for him. He loved the power that came from manipulating people. Hi, baby. He loved the power that came with manipulating people into committing these atrocities. He felt it was like a ritual to be initiated into the family, committing these murders. And Pazuzu never wanted to commit them himself. He just wanted to get people to do it for him because it made him feel powerful. So Matt also states, afterwards he got in contact with the super buff guy, took him out to Red Lobster and was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, Pazuzu wanted me to kill you that night. He wanted me to murder you that night. We were all hanging out at his house." And he says after that he never saw that dude again, which is probably a good thing. But so before, like I said, Pazuzu was more obsessed with getting people to do things for him. He loved the power that came with getting people to commit crimes, murder for him, people that dig holes to put bodies in for him. And all around just he enjoyed the power that came from him feeling like he was this super badass cult leader. So after Pazuzu tries to manipulate Matt, Matt is fucking pissed. He's done. So he goes to the police station, and and I'm going to tell you this right now. Matt is one of the reasons Pazuzu got caught. Matt, and how headstrong he was and how good of a person he was, is the reason Pazuzu was caught. Now, I personally believe Pazuzu would have gotten caught regardless if Matt had gone to the police department, because of how reckless they were, and they were like, how much they boasted to other people about their murders. They were not shy about it. But it would have taken a long time for that to happen, and more people probably would have been killed. But thanks to Matt and his persistence and, being headstrong, Pazuzu was picked up off the streets before he could hurt anyone else. So my fucking heart hella goes out to Matt. In the documentary, he talks about, I drink all the time because I've got like PTSD and it helps me sleep. As one veteran to another man, I know it sucks. And I did like at the end of the documentary, it showed that he was going to college to be a PI, to be a criminal investigation, to be a PI. So I was super excited to see that he was doing something that he loved. He goes in the police department, and instead of speaking to a uniformed officer, he demands to speak to a detective. And once he speaks to a detective, he's like, listen, if you do not go and do something about this man, I'm going to go to his house and I'm going to fucking kill him myself. And he basically is like, I'm a fucking veteran. I'm a soldier. Like I fought in Iraq. Like I like using his status as a veteran to, further drive his credibility into the detective, telling the detective everything he knew, everything he had heard. And so this is what, I apologize. One thing I forgot to mention is that what also drove this is because one day Matt was hanging out at Pazuzu's house, and they're sitting by the fire. And Pazuzu says, Matt, I know you turned me in. And Matt's like, what? And he's like, I know that you're you are the reason that my house got raided the first time. But Pazuzu was like, but you're my brother and I love you. So I'm not going to hurt you or anything like that. So we're going to try to do like a little outline here and then make a little wing boy right here. Let's see how it goes, because I do not know how to do the inner eye wing. Let's see if this tool will help. So like I said, Pazuzu tells Matt, I know you turned me in. I know you are the reason when my house got raided. And it's not going to work. I can't even see. And basically it's like, but you're my brother and I love you. So, I'm okay with it. And he looks at Matt. Matt says that he grabbed a piece of meat he had put in the fire. And Matt was not sure if it was an animal part or human flesh, and takes a bite out of it, and he's like, the devil protects me. I can never be caught, and I can never be knocked out. And Matt said, that kind of pushed him to the point where he was like, well, he says, I knocked him the fuck out, and I'm the reason he got caught. So I've kind of got an idea. I've got a little wingy boy in here. I'm going to take some eyeliner and come down and kind of accentuate that white, and I may add some black right there. But I think this is coming along way better than the look I did yesterday, let me tell you. So like I said, Matt tells that story about how Pazuzu said, I know it was you that turned me in, but I can't be caught, I can't be knocked out, the devil protects me, I have Satan on my side, blah, 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 I'm an edgy turd boy piece of shit. So on October 5th of 2014, police get a second search warrant for Pazuzu's property, and then they begin that search. And then when they get to the backyard, they had heard that there had possibly been a body buried under the fire pit that they had in the backyard, and that's the first place they look, and lo and behold, the first place they look, there is a body. Now, one thing that really did shock people is because, especially people that were in, this circle, or that were somehow directly involved, people like Stacy, is that they had talked about, Josh's disappearance, that they believe that Josh was inside, was in the basement. The police begin digging further, and they find a second body, and that body belonged to Tommy Welch. It turns out Tommy Welch had been reported missing just a few months after Josh had been reported missing. And it's believed that the anonymous Crime Stoppers tip they got of someone named Pazuzu, the person that gave that tip was referring to Tommy Welch's body. So the walkthrough of the house too has been made public records, and I'll show some of that footage while I talk about the trial and such. But so once Pazuzu is arrested, the media has a field day with this. Like they should, of course, this is a small Christian town. This is God's country. So they have a field day, it gets national media attention. Front page headlines are like, oh, devil worshiper this, devil worshiper that, blah, 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 blah. Instead of focusing on the poor victims that got their lives taken and the families of those victims, all they talk about is how he was a devil worshiper and, he was the son of Satan, this, that, and the other. Anything to sell headlines, because what I always tell people is at the end of the day, you need to understand that news stations are just TV stations. They're not funded by the government, the state, or anything like that. They are TV stations at the end of the day, and what gets viewers like no other? Fear, and keeping people afraid. So this whole big report comes out on it's national news. Devil worshiper this, devil worshiper that, filed his teeth down to a point, blah, 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 whatever they can to get viewership. Quickly after the arrest, the house is deemed unfit for habitation. They tell Cynthia, Pazuzu's mom, they say, you have X amount of days to fix this house up, or X amount of months to fix this house up and make it fit for human habitation, or it is going to be foreclosed on. So she ends up being foreclosed on. One of the big things about this case too that really fucking pissed me off is that Pazuzu's mom went into the police station at one point and told them about her son murdering somebody. She says she walked back into her room, got ready for work, and left. And when the police were like, oh, well, can we come search your house? She's like, no. Now, I understand, they didn't get a permission to search, but you fucking come on, dude. Like, that's gotta be something. Like, someone just walks in and says, hey, I just saw a murder happen at my house, and police are like, we need more information than that, lady. Come on now. Finally, the autopsy reports and stuff like that. Oh, one thing I also did think was funny, when Pazuzu was tried for the accessory to manslaughter, his mental evaluation records were released by accident, and so it really just kind of paints a picture of how incompetent the government system in that town was. So the autopsy report comes out, and it says that Josh was shot 3 times in the head and 4 or 5 times in the chest. And it shows, in this documentary, it shows that Stacy is reading the autopsy report the first time, and it's fucking heartbreaking, dude, because you can tell that Stacy absolutely loved Josh with all her heart, and sometimes things don't work out, but you can tell she really loved him. And she said, she told their son, there's a possibility your dad is dead and that someone murdered him, and she was expecting this big reaction, but it was almost as if their son let out a sigh of relief, because his dad being dead was easier to cope with than him abandoning him, which fucking broke my heart, dude. So while in jail, Pazuzu is placed on a safekeeping order. Basically, a safekeeping order is placed when a prisoner is deemed a danger to themselves or the staff. It said that Pazuzu had tried to commit suicide, so they placed him on a safekeeping order. Now, the contents of that safekeeping order were sealed because it was an active, investigation. So the search warrants, the autopsy report was released, but the search warrants and stuff were sealed because it was an ongoing investigation. Why Joshua was targeted by Pazuzu is unclear. It said that Joshua had been staying at the residence for quite some time. I don't know. Cynthia ends up actually meeting Pazuzu's mom and talking with her, and she says, Josh sometimes didn't have a place to stay, or he got his utilities cut off at his home. And so, she didn't mind Josh staying with them. So the morning of October 28th, 2015, Pazuzu is found dead in his cell. It's said that he died from a wound on the pit of his elbow. He's found laying in a pool of his own blood. Now, how he gave himself that wound is still unclear. There is a rumor that he bit into it with his pointed teeth, but that's never been confirmed. Police did do like a search of the cell to try to find any possible instrument he could have used, but they couldn't find anything. He was on a safekeeping order from previously trying to commit suicide. So the individuals involved were Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock. So Amber Birch goes to trial. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I may clean up the little sparklies here. So Amber takes a plea deal and pleads guilty to second-degree murder, armed robbery, and accessory after the fact to murder. It said that she shot Tommy Welch with the same .22 rifle Pazuzu used to kill Josh Wetzler. It's also said that when Pazuzu killed Josh, that he had called Amber, who was in South Carolina at the time, told her that she needed to help bury a body and she needed to get back, which she did come back and help bury the body. She was sentenced to a maximum of 39 years behind bars with credit for time served. Crystal Matlock pleads guilty to conspiracy to accessory after the fact of murder of Josh Wetzler. She addresses the victim's family in court and apologizes and is sentenced to a minimum of 3 years and 2 months. After the sentencing of Crystal Matlock, the case had come to a close, and before the judge dismissed the court, a First Amendment attorney stood up and asked the judge to unseal the documents of the case, such as the search warrant, the safekeeping order, and stuff like that. The judge, because it's not uncommon for them to be sealed during an open investigation. And so the judge, since the investigation had come to a close, saw no point in keeping the documents sealed, and he unsealed the documents so reporters were able to get their hands on it. Stacy Carter saw some of the documents for the first time, and the documents that really showed an insanely gross negligence of law enforcement. That is pretty much the story of the murders of Tommy Welch and Josh Wetzler. This case fucking just reeks of police negligence. They get multiple tips about this guy that he has bodies buried in his backyard. I understand police can't act on every single tip they get, but when things start adding up, more people are saying the same thing, and then he's convicted of accessory to the fact of manslaughter with a slap on the wrist after a guy dies while hanging out with him and his friend. You gotta fucking put your two and two together and be like, okay, maybe this guy does, is a person of interest. And if it wasn't for Matt, if it wasn't for, all the people coming forward, and who I guess, some of them were scared that Pazuzu would have retaliated against him, but Matt comes forward. Like I said, my heart goes out to all the people that did come forward, but Matt really drove the point home, going to demanding to speak to a detective, using his credibility as a soldier. Like I said, in the documentary, Matt talks about his PTSD and stuff and how he drinks a lot because it helps him sleep. And like I said, one veteran to another, man, that's like, I understand. But near the end, it's very heartwarming to see that he starts going to school for something that he wants to do. He wants to be a private investigator. And I wish him the best of luck on that journey. There's one funny part where him and his roommate, the water company comes and shuts off their water because they hadn't paid their bill. And as soon as the company truck leaves, Matt walks into his room and pulls out the water key that they used to turn on water and shut it off, walks outside, opens the grate and turns his water back on and goes back inside, which I thought was fucking hilarious. And one thing that really pissed me off about this case is that, one, Pazuzu's mom was never faced any kind of charges for witnessing a murder and doing nothing about it. Serena Billings, this doesn't make me angry, but I figured I'd tie up this loose end. Serena Billings, her dad was never brought up on any charges because he had passed away before this case came to a head, but she said herself, she was certain that if this case had come to a head while he was still alive, he would be behind bars and he wouldn't make it because he helped them bury a body. But Pazuzu's mom was never brought up on any charges. You can tell that she was enabling. You could tell that she definitely, and I will say, I understand she probably was not one in the soundest of mind, because in the house that they were living in, for her to be okay with that, there was something wrong there, and she was also probably terrified of her son. One thing that really did piss me off, though, is at the end of the documentary, she agrees to an interview with Stacy. And Stacy's just kind of like, why was Josh there? What happened? Why would this be allowed in your home? Blah, 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 blah. And the whole time, Pazuzu's mom is like, oh, well, he's a good kid. He's a good boy. He had his problems, but he, all in all, was a good boy. And I was like, lady, no, he wasn't. Okay, I'm going to stop messing with this look before I ruin it even more. I tried to add some cool lines and such, and it just did not work out in my favor, so I had to go back to the OG blueprint. But, like I said, his mom was just in fucking denial. I get it. He's your son. You love him. But at some point, dude, you got to admit that he was fucked up. He murdered somebody, murdered 2 people. And it's just annoying how at the end she's like going around showing pictures of him and be like, oh, look, there's my little warrior. There's my little warrior. He had his problems, but he wasn't a bad kid. I'm just like, yeah, okay, lady, whatever, man. You can live in denial your entire life. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But that is the murders of Tommy Welch and Joshua Wetzler surrounding Pazuzu Algarad. Again, you can go watch this documentary. It's a 5-part series. It's kind of drawn out, so I think I fell asleep at the end and had to go rewatch it. It's kind of drawn out, but it is a good documentary. One of the main reporters, Chad Nance, does a phenomenal job of putting everything into beautiful, beautiful words. So I do recommend it. Like I said, there is some explicit drug use, some IV drug use. So if that, that is not for you, I wouldn't recommend watching those scenes. I think it's in the first episode and near the end as well. So like I said, I recorded this yesterday, but my fucking dishwasher was so loud, but I already pulled our next week from the murder pot, and that is Lizzie Borden. I couldn't read my handwriting at first, and I was like, who the hell is Lizzie Borden? So next week, we are going to go over Lizzie Borden. All in all, I like how this turned out. I'm glad I had to redo this look because the one I did yesterday was fucking atrocious, but this one turned out quite fabulous. This is probably one of the more complicated looks I've done, and I'm super, super proud of myself. But thanks to everybody in my TikTok lives who gave me suggestions for the murder pot. It's so full now. If you have any suggestions of a crime you want covered, leave it in the comments below. It could be a cult, anything involving crime. Doesn't have to be a serial killer. But I will put it in the murder pot if you leave it in the comments below. So I also have a P.O Box if you want to write me letters. I really, really do encourage you to because I like reading them. I make P.O Box opening videos. I read your letters. I would like to make a scrapbook full of them so I can go back and look at them when my brain wants to be stupid and tell me that what I'm doing is for nothing. But I will put the address for my P.O Box in the description of this video. I will also link the documentary I watched on this case. Like I said, there is some explicit drug use, so that's just a quick trigger warning. I also have a podcast called Snacks Packs, SNAXPX. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. It will be there. If you could listen to that and give me some feedback, I would absolutely love it. You can join our COVEN, which is our Discord server. I'll link that in the description of this video. Sorry this is coming out so late. I don't want to put out something that's bad quality to you guys. And listening to the recording of the first recording, God, that dishwasher is it's like a fucking jet engine, dude. It's so loud. When I try to use the program that deletes background noise out of the video on my video editor, it made me sound like a robot. So I don't want to put out something that's not of quality, and this was a long case, so I'm not going to make you endure 30 to 40 minutes of just ear-splitting dishwasher noises, some hellacious ASMR. Thank you so much for stopping by for another episode of Crime and Cosmetics. I very much appreciate you. I have to reach 4,000 public watch hours to monetize my YouTube channel and start profiting from it. We're almost halfway there. We're almost at 200, sorry, not 200, we're almost at 2,000 hours. So thank you so much, you guys, for all of that. That means the absolute world to me because this is what I want to do. I want to make content for you guys and make you laugh and teach you things, I suppose. But next week we'll be going over the Lizzie Borden case, so I hope to see you there. If you have some makeup looks you want to see, please leave them in the comments below, because sometimes I have a tough time figuring out what I want to do and I just Google shit. So I would love to take suggestions for you. I'm thinking about making a separate jar and I'll write down colors on it and throw it in there, and then we'll pick the colors, and then whatever colors we get, that's what we're going to do for that video. I will see you guys next week for Lizzie Borden. And as always, I hope you have the best day ever. I hope all the good things happen to you. Please remember that you're so loved, you are so valued. Your life is precious, and you have people out there who care about you. You know, I care about you. Please be kind to others, and most of all, be kind to yourself. And stay safe. I will see you guys next week.